fast, right? So my name is Alex, and just to set the record straight, this session is not for you guys. If you have enough drive space, if your laptop's fitted with 100 terabyte of drive, well, you got everything set, right? So hopefully the feeling that you guys are struggling with is this. You have X capacity and you have X times 10 that you need to fit into that capacity. And this is some of the ways and tricks that I've learned up through the years that files tend to hide itself from being deleted. It's doing everything it can to be stuck on the drive, right? So just as a quick start, this session will provide you some free tools that I hope you would consider. A new way of thinking storage, and hopefully reflecting on your existing structure. So a new way of thinking storage, I found this quite interesting because I had no idea that Satya would bring this up during keynote, but it's expected to be an increase from 40 zettabytes to 175 zettabytes the next 5 years of cloud storage. And just so one could grasp around that it's not only the endpoint, the clients and PCs we need to deal with this, we also need to think about this in the data centers just for starters. So one of the customers that hires me to clean up their big offenders of storage, they have some Isilon storage units, and they consume about 1,300 watts. What's interesting is that they have them in redundant in separate locations, so it requires them 2,600 watts just to keep a storage pool running. Now, my electric vehicle consumes less than that, getting to them. So instead of adding up and scaling out on storage that's obsolete, you could literally just get rid of all the information that's not needed to be sticking around, and instead have an environmental footprint that literally replaces an EV. And to begin with that, who here has ever tried the disk cleanup that's built in Windows? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, I got your attention. So one of the things is to automate this. How can you automate the disk cleanup? And some of the other interesting things that I find is that we have power users that have about 256 gigabyte of their C drive, and they have another terabyte or two or so as a second drive. Problem is they got, 32 or 64 gigabyte of RAM because they're power users, so their hybrid file hogs about 24 or more of their C drive, which is 256. So if you're on a desktop, flip the switch that's a commandlet in CMD, power config -H off, and you simply remove the hybrid file. So the reason why I'm explicit on this for the desktop is that it might not be that wise to take every free suggestion that I provide you to a laptop. Modern laptops have something that's called hybrid sleep. While their desktop do not provide this solution, a modern laptop does. So hybrid sleep puts your entire memory load to the drive, so it both keeps the memory alive in the memory, but also in case of power failure, in case your battery runs low, you can still boot up from the hibernation file. Now, a desktop, if there's a power failure, you have a bigger problem. So I mentioned the built-in tool of disk cleanup. Who here has been automating the disk cleanup tool? Oh, we got some interesting. So one of the interesting things about the disk cleanup is that you can do two commandlets, and that's sage set and sage run. You see here that the windows.old folder is increasing, and it takes about 28, 30 gigs every time you upgrade to a new version of Windows. The typical value that you get is the download folders, the thumbnails, the temp folders. But once you go to the system settings, you see all those cached Windows update. You see the current or previous versions of Windows. But we want to automate a cleanup of these things so that you can run this as a scheduled task. So what you do is that you say clean manager -sage set with a number, and just for the sake of coolness, I typed in lead. You get a dialog box that remind you quite much so of the disk cleanup. So you type in the disk cleanup, and you'll find them in registry with your own key. So looking for that state flag, 1337, you could duplicate this and add that as a registry script. So all of a sudden, you could prime all your PCs with those registry entries, and you could run the cleaner manager, Sage Run, with that value, and it automatically triggers the cleaner, and the process is running for its user. That's quite cool. Anyone here who updates Windows every 6 months? Anyone does it every year? All right, so this is something that's, because it's going to steal about 32, somewhere between 25 and 30 gigs of storage every time Windows version is updated, or if you have a lot of temp files and cleanups to do, this is also a nifty way of automating stuff. So if you do the command-let sage set with a value, I'm going to upload these videos for you, so it's fine to take pictures, but you also get the demo. So you could prime those with entering the registry key, and then unattended run that as command-let with a Sage Run. Now, I don't think I could ever get off Microsoft Ignite without talking about the power of the cloud. I think I'd be booed out by some FTEs, right? So one of the coolest things that we've seen on endpoints on client side is that you now can download from cloud. Who here orders custom-made, custom images from their PC vendors? That's quite respective of what I see most companies do. So traditionally, they say to a vendor and say, we want yay many PCs, and they ship them with the recovery image and the partition, which hogs about 10 to 20% of your drive. So first of all, there's an interesting take to that. First thing is that it steals a lot of your drive space, so you need to buy a bigger model. Second of all, what do you do when your drive fails? Your backup's gone, right? So there's no way of resetting your PC if there ever should be a bad experience with a drive that fails you. But with the new feature that downloads from cloud, you could order any laptop you want, and either you can do the built-in version of Reset PC. If that not is sufficient, you could download from cloud. The only thing that probably should be worth mentioning is that if you boot your PC in Windows recovery environment, it requires that you plug in an Ethernet adapter. Valid point to that, a lot of PCs don't come with an Ethernet port these days. So the second thing is OneDrive for Business. Who here has been migrating the home folder to OneDrive for Business? All right, I'm sorry I didn't have chocolate for you guys because you're awesome. One of the things I find is that a lot of companies tend to synchronize, have a file sync to their H drive. What's problematic with that? First of all, if there's a mismatch from PC to PC, you're synchronizing the same error across all those PCs in the environment. Second is that every PC you log into is going to consume the same amount of drive space. So if there's a multi-user scenario that you have 10 or 20 users, it's going to download all those users, every user's file to that PC. And that's going to be problematic if you're in a company that still runs a lot of 128, or fortunately, if you do, 512 gigabyte of SSDs. But with the OneDrive for Business, the end users still have access to all those files they have in OneDrive for Business, but all of them will be, by default, selected as cloud only, and the user will be able to download them as they want. Now, I mentioned Ethernet port. For the scenario, for any reason, that you need to download from cloud, I'm not sure if anyone's seen the Windows 10 media creation tool. Surprisingly few, and that's something I see around. You could download the free Windows 10 media creation tool, and all I need is an 8 gigabyte USB stick. And first of all, you're covered from the Ethernet port problem. But secondly, if you're in a black spot, where you either have loss of Wi-Fi or internet connection, or for the sake of anything on a cruise ship. Wi-Fi tend to be kind of hoggy on satellite link. So this is a way to download the Windows media to go, and you could also save it as ISO file for later use if you want to keep it on a separate stick and create a bootable later. I mentioned OneDrive for Business, and there's a Danish guy called Per Larsen. He got a really cool script. So he figured out a way of triggering every endpoints so that you could configure files on demand and have that automatically sign in on your PC when it boots up. Of course, that would require a PC to be Azure Active Directory joined. So if you're hybrid joined or Azure Active Directory joined, that's fine. For all those others, it would be group policy, and you can do the same for those. But triggering these three entries, and you're set. So the interesting thing is that he's already created that PowerShell script for you. So if you're in a Intune or environment that you have the capability of using those, push that PowerShell script, and you're ready to go. I promise you guys a free tool. So anyone seen Wistree before? Anyone seen any of those third-party drive solutions? So Winderstat, anyone? Yeah. So Winderstat got one thing that's superior to Wistree, to my knowledge at least, and that's on networking. So Wistree is for your client computers only, but again, it's super fast. So where's the jackpot? And it kind of takes down those hidden files that you really don't know that's out there. And I'm going to show you a live demo of this. Let's see here. We got to go up. There we go. Duplicate? Right. So, right-click and Wistree. Say yes. And it scans my entire drive from that point on. And what you'll see is that you got a tree spanning, and it designs, it gives you a percentage. What's a little soft spot for this one is that I don't have 3.4 terabytes on my PC. But once you see that the allocated space, you see that this is only the amount of data that's been downloaded from my OneDrive for Business. So already here you can see that download from cloud and having the capability to download files on demand is useful. Otherwise, I would be in big problem because I don't think Microsoft supports a Surface yet with 4.5 terabyte disk until they launch their own replaceable models where you can swap their drives. So let's dig down to the app data. The first time I ever stumbled upon this problem was a media journalist who recurringly said that his drive was full, but he couldn't find any data to delete. And so didn't I. His drive was full, but there was nothing to be found. And this was Windows 7. Windows 10 is a little better, a little smarter. However, he did a third-party tool, a media tool, and every time he put in a SD card, this tool started caching data. He didn't import them, it just started caching. So it tended to hide it very well, not under app data, but under program data. That's a hidden system file under C. So Wistree found it right away. Intriguingly enough, is that the tools that I've been using to create your videos today give me some issues whenever it crashes. So if there's a user using a frequent applications that gives you these kind of dump files or log files, we already saw that Disk Cleaner didn't deal with those kind of files because it doesn't want to mess up your applications, and that with a very good reason. So we can just go ahead and delete these files manually, and we're good to go. We can see the third-party Camtasia as well, and it's gone. So if I were to just do a new scan, you see that I've gone from 34.84, and hopefully it's been decreasing a little bit. Or did it in real time? Right, it did it in real time. Another thing, what company sanctions Spotify and says it's okay to install Spotify on all corporate PCs? No hands, all right. Anyone here knows that they have Spotify anyway? Yeah, we know people have Spotify. Anyone had anyone call because my drive's full because of Spotify? I had. So the problem again is that Spotify doesn't tell you that it's been full. But once you go into the system, give it a second here, and look, you see that Spotify is stealing a lot of data. Because the typical cached folder and offline download, every time you cache a Spotify file, it has about a gigabyte of caching. So that's not a problem. Problem is once users starting to offline download all their playlists. And that's pretty much the same way that it works for Android and iOS. So if they do that for Windows, it ignores that 1 gigabyte cache, and you're out of drive. Beneficially, it's easy to figure out. So let's see here. Jump back in. So another problem we stumble upon is drivers. Who here loves printers? Who here had printer driver issues? That's more it. So a way of tangling this is people don't realize how big drivers are nowadays. Normally a driver was about 100 kilobytes. Now they tend to be up to gigabytes. To find and delete those, you need to do that using a command line tool called pnputil. Anyone used pnputil to either inject or remove drivers? Now, anyone done that by a graphic interface? All right. So hopefully we are going to teach you something there as well. We use WizTree, which I just showed you, and we use WizTree to identify that there are driver that steals space. Anyone know where drivers are stored? That's under C Windows System 32 driver store. So let's just go directly to the sweet spot, or the honeypot if you want. And you find that under System 32, you have a driver store and a file repository. And already now you can see that we have graphic driver that's duplicate. And in the instance of Surface Book, they have both an Intel graphic driver in the lid, and they also have an NVIDIA driver in the base. And more laptops is working that way. So you type in pnputil and enumerate them, you get a whole list of this. You need to export it to a notepad file or a CSV file in order to traverse it, because it's just too much. And it really doesn't say, is this a big file? Do I need it? It only says that it's an NVIDIA display and of EA version. So there's a third-party tool named Wrapper, which does this so much more elegantly. And by load, it enumerates. And by clicking select old drivers, you can see that it automatically turns on old, obsolete versions and outdated versions of a driver, and it will deal that accordingly. So hit those and select those, and fortunately, if I'm lucky, the movie will continue and delete those. Come on, Alex, click. I never listen to myself, but I still laugh every time I do. So it starts deleting the driver package. Whenever you have a fail, if you do, like I did, it comes with a detailed log. Otherwise, it just say, yay, you're done. So you click complete, and you can refresh it. And once you close that, you see that the WizTree in real time already deleted those entries, and you saved about 1 gig of files. It's normally not a problem, but if you have an active environment or PC that lasts for many years, and you both pushes Windows Update and driver updates, you're going to have to encounter this. My last demo for you guys is one of the sweetest things that I know of in Windows 10. So let's go back in duplicate. And hit Settings, System, and Storage. It used to be called Storage Sense, but now it's called Storage. So one of the things that's really neat about this is that in the Windows 7 environment, you needed to use WizTree for everything. In Windows 10, it at least is being honest enough to say that we're sorting apps based on size, and you find that Spotify is a problem. So you can either go ahead and tell the user to delete that without having to use WizTree, or you can just deal with that accordingly. And for those of you who sanction this, you could either delete Spotify via Intune, you add the app from the store, and you just uninstall it, or you just automatically remove it. One of the other things that is super interesting is that you could ask locally available cloud content. Now, what does that mean? Every time you do an exam, it says that you work for Contoso and you just acquired Fabricam, right? So for this demo, I just acquired them both. So if you're working for a company and your shared folder, your OneDrive for Business, and the acquired shared company is all being downloaded because SharePoint Online now supports multiple companies and guest companies to be downloadable, you can now tell them and configure them to say that if the document's not being used the last 30 days, please clean it up. So it's automatically being cleaned and scheduled for deletion. So, by that, it didn't want to go back. No, I didn't want to go back. All right, so this is what I got to show you. The next slide. Thank you. Please remember the evals, folks. I won't let you down and keep you here for the theme park rides you're going to enjoy. Thank you so much for your time, and I really hope that some of these tips have been clarifying and that you're rethinking storage in a different way. And remember to drive an EV, right?